I think what is impressive in the last few months has been the intensity of Prime Minister Modi's commitment to do something about AI. And I think that is the big change that you have actually a government that is capable of mobilizing, deploying resources. For example, this whole new semiconductor mission, which is
Yeah.
barely a year and a half old, it's beginning to have some effects. Similarly, if there is a mission mode, if we take the compute, for example, as a mission mode, India can achieve that. After all, you remember Rajiv Gandhi time, there was various technology missions that were undertaken, and all of them helped bridge the gap with the rest of the world.
For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
Welcome to the Gist on Strat News Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. Good evening. A high-profile summit on artificial intelligence in Delhi ended with a declaration on underscoring the risks of AI, the threats to democracy, personal data, and so on. But it also recognized AI's ability to address challenges of various kinds, including those related to society and development. I have with me Dr. Raja Mohan, Senior Fellow at the Asia Society Policy Institute in Delhi. Raja, glad to have you.
Thank you, Surya, for asking me.
Raja, before we come to this declaration and all, where does India stand on AI? Do we have an ecosystem? Do we have any strengths in AI?
Look, I think when it comes to AI, at least four broad areas are considered necessary, in how you rank different nations in their AI capabilities. One is the capacity to, do research in the basic areas which are at the foundation of the AI. The second is the engineering and technological capabilities of a country. The third is the question, having data, large amounts of data, not just data. Most countries have data, but quality data, data that is which has character and integrity, that can be used for in the generative AI. And fourth is the what we call computing power. What in the jargon they say compute.
Yeah.
That is, what is the capacity you have? What is the computing power that you have in your nation? So I think India scores reasonably well in the first two counts. That is the some scientific capability. I mean, Indian publications on in the overall journals on AI has been going up, and India's talent, the second, is one of the best in the world, and they score very high on that point. In fact, much of the world is looking to Indian manpower to build the new AI systems.
Yeah.
It's in the third and fourth areas. I think we have problems. One is there is data. Government has data. This is what the Prime Minister was saying the other day at the G5 summit. Government has a lot of data. Now we must make it available.
Hmm.
But the point is, what the
Hmm.
Prime Minister says and what the bureaucracy does. I mean, of course, there's a
Yeah.
big gap. But given the diversity of your languages, given the amount of data the government has collected, there is a basic possibility there. But I think its credibility and quality needs to be improved. The biggest weakness of India is really the computing power,
Hmm.
that you don't have enough high performance computers, and that you don't have the high performance chips, that you don't produce them, which are all in great demand. You can't just import them. And in
Yeah.
fact, if you notice, the PM again said in his speech he wants to start a new mission that will actually bridge this gap in the computing side, that India needs to build the computing capability to be able to be a player in the global domain. But meanwhile, our engineering talent keeps us afloat in the top ranks. But I think we have a lot of work to do.
Mhm. So obviously we are way behind the US and even China.
Of course, US and China are way ahead. I mean, there's no question. Both on all the four domains, they're way ahead. But it is not. It should not be too difficult to catch up. You see, the thing is in AI, like all technologies, The first mover needs a lot of capabilities.
Mhm.
But once the first mover has actually produced a technology, a basic framework, the second movers do bridge the timelines in terms of how quickly can you, uh, imitate, copy, build on the capabilities that exist. Because if someone trained a language model, you can use those. So it's
Mhm.
not that this is a unbridgeable gap, because the second movers always can do it cheaper, probably better. But I think the key still remains. I mean, I think we have the advantage in manpower. We have a weakness in terms of the computing power. So as India bridges the later, the gap can be closed. And I think in any way we are not simply seeing it as a race, but I think it's also through partnerships.
Mhm.
That if you saw, the whole GPA is about
Yeah.
collaboration between democratic countries. So as in so many other areas, if the partnership with the US continues to grow, you should be able to have a bridge the gap with China much faster.
Mhm. Since you mentioned the global partnership, the declaration called for inclusive AI and all that. But given that AI is so strongly embedded in two major countries, in a sense, we are already at a disadvantage, isn't it?
No, don't be so pessimistic, Surya. I mean, I think the question is how we use it.
Hmm.
That it is, look, compared to large parts of the developing world, India is way ahead. But that was also the story through the last 75 years. Look, when we started out on the nuclear thing, we were one of the, we were really fresh kid on the block. But
Yeah.
then you have the capabilities. Similarly, on the space today, for example, India's small, relatively low investment, low price space capabilities today are seen as valuable around the world. So its question is not that it's what you do is what matters. And I think what is impressive in the last few months has been the intensity of Prime Minister Modi's commitment to do something about AI. And I think that is the big change that you have actually a government that is capable of mobilizing, deploying resources. For example, this whole new semiconductor mission, which is
Yeah.
barely a year and a half old, it's beginning to have some effects. Similarly, if there is a mission mode, if we take the compute, for example, as a mission mode, India can achieve that. After all, you remember Rajiv Gandhi time, there was various technology missions that were undertaken, and all of them helped bridge the gap with the rest of the world.
Mhm.
And that's where we are. I think a focused approach by the government, I think, gives India a chance to be in the top ranks of the AI powers.
Mhm. But overseas in the US, AI is largely driven by big tech companies, isn't it?
Yeah, because the scale of investments and efforts needed for example, the Chat GPT, I mean, which is now so popular, which is called generative AI.
Yeah.
It involved, I mean, spending lots and lots of money on computing power, of hiring hundreds of thousands of scientists to be engineers to be able to produce this. So it will cost resources and technology. So the big companies are the ones which are in the lead. For example, the same old companies, which is Google, Microsoft.
Yeah.
Uh, now Elon Musk is, Twitter has just come out with a chatbot. So these are the big guys have an advantage. But the story of America is also that there'll always be some other guy who disrupts this.
Yeah. Mm.
But the curve is really, we are at the beginning of an AI curve. So there's always possibilities for disruption. So the question is, how does India build the capabilities, and how does India create partnerships? So for example, both Microsoft and Google are eager to partner with India. So you take advantage of where you have their interest in your manpower, their interest in your research facilities. All these major companies are also setting up global capability centers in India.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so there are ways in which you can engage the big tech companies, but with a clear aim that at the end of it, we should go up the ladder.
Mhm. So, what is the kind of money investment we are looking at here?
No, I don't think any numbers have been put by the government, but I think my sense is it is well within the means of the government. So we're going to see I believe the announcement of a formal AI policy by the government of India in the next few weeks, if not days. So that will give us a clear indication. So I think the PM speech, I would strongly urge our viewers to take a look at that, and which really lays out a fairly comprehensive framework. Very impressive speech, which really gives you some window into what the government's thinking is.
A lot of the AI that we read about in the media is about the military applications of AI. Is that a little, how does that, how do you see this?
Look, I think any new technology, throughout the history of mankind, the first guys to jump on it will be the military.
Yeah.
So even it's almost 2016 or so when President Putin declared whoever controls AI will dominate the world. But that's the story. Last 3,000 years or even before that. Uh, who better uses technology has always been an important factor. So there's no doubt that US and China today are both investing significantly in military capabilities. And it's not that India is not doing anything.
Hmm.
Already we're beginning to see India use drones and drone
Yeah.
swarms. But we're at the very beginning of the stage. But I think what the US and Chinese, I think they've already invested probably a decade and more effort at building AI capabilities in the military domain, and largely reflected in the so-called autonomous weapons. For example, autonomous. When we talk about driverless cars, you can think of driverless tanks. So when you talk about drones, you can think about unmanned aircraft,
Yeah.
military aircraft, fighter aircraft, which will, unlike in a normal fighter jet, a pilot, can only take this much of stress, while an autonomous fighter aircraft, which can take split-second decisions, can undergo enormous changes in gravity, will be a huge advantage. And how they get developed. This is really, we're talking about the upper end of it. But even at the lower end, simply having uh, soldiers, for example. So people are talking about using robots in the battlefield. It need not be these guys robots will come and fight, but they might have a role in pulling out soldiers from battlefield, medical evacuation. A whole range of activities are possible. So I would say, you remember the American drone warfare in
Yeah.
Afghanistan towards the end of their campaign there. The guy sitting in Florida was driving them, right? Was directing them where exactly does the drone go.
Yeah.
So I think we are already down that path. The question is which areas that also we can see. Almost from you don't think of maintenance, for
Yeah.
example. Having AI systems to better manage your inventories, better do your maintenance, better do your logistics. After all, these are the more mundane aspects of warfare. So every aspect of modern military organization lends itself to significant modernization, upgradation by the use of AI. And I think that we are at the beginning of that process. And you would have noticed when President Biden and President Xi Jinping met in San Francisco, they talked about potential dangers of AI being used to deal with nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Hmm.
So the fear that, look, if nuclear weapons are so destructive, and if you hand that over to an autonomous system, would that? So I think they're talking about, look, we need to talk about it. We need to create norms for it. Meanwhile, the United Nations has General Assembly a few weeks ago
Yeah. Yeah.
passed a resolution urging the Secretary General to give a report on so-called autonomous weapons. So I think the debate has begun. So has the debate has actually followed the expansive use of AI for military purposes.
Mhm. Would you say it is the rivalry with China which is driving a lot of the AI in the US, especially in military?
Yeah, that is, but there's always some rivalry or the other, right? So at this point,
Yeah.
in the Cold War, it was US-Soviet rivalry that drove a lot of the arms race. But today, because China is unlike Soviet Union, so China is a bigger economic power, has
Yeah.
invested massively in the digital and the other domains. So, therefore, the challenge from China to the classical American dominance over new technologies is bigger, and therefore, this race is going to be far more consequential, more intense than what happened between Russia and America.
Last question, Raja. I mean, you briefly referred to it in your remarks earlier. What must India do? What are the steps India must take to ensure that it's not left behind in the AI race?
No, my sense is two things. I mean, I think, as the Prime Minister said, one, invest in computing capabilities. That's the most important thing. The second important thing is get the large troves of government data from social surveys, poverty, economic, how, it kind of things that the government collects are enormous. Now, you know, review this data, clean it up if there are any problems, and make it available for Indian companies to work on, to be able to build that, that use that data for development of indigenous Indian systems. The third is Minister Chandrasekhar has said, look, India has had the talent, which everybody wants, Indian talent and engineers, but we could very quickly run out of that.
Yeah. Hmm.
So therefore, investing in more, training, skilling programs in AI, expanding, the AI courses in engineering colleges. So that becomes the next. So while India is at this point in the forefront, as the demand grows, it's not that all Indians should go abroad and work in the US, that you also need more people here. So therefore, I
Yeah.
think putting money now into engineering and training people. And finally, to stay up in the game, you need the capability in the basic research of the kind of issues that go into the AI. For example, vision. How does a machine vision? I mean, how does a machine look like? What we think of looking at an
Yeah.
objective and differentiating it. So those kind of things, about ability to convert sound, listen to sounds, turn them into meaningful outcomes. All these require basic physics, uh, biology, or a whole range of research. And I think India will need to invest a lot more in those core sciences relating to this technology. And then, of course, the semiconductors. I mean, materials. So you have actually a whole bunch of technologies which India needs to invest in, uh, to open up Indian sector to be able to get more foreign teachers to come and teach us. So you need to do a lot of those things to be a strong AI power. Because I think one thing is very clear. Most people agree we are at the beginning of the AI age.
Yeah.
The digital age we've been familiar with last 20 years is now going to turn into the AI age. That is, next 3-4 years are going to be quite crucial. And I think that's where investing in this, its foundations becomes very important.
So clearly, India has to get its act together, especially when it comes to deep tech research. Raja Mohan, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And with those of you who joined us on this conversation, thank you for subscribing to our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media and Twitter. Thank you very much. Good night.